You know what's funny about being called unphotogenic? It's not the sting of the insult, it's the clinical precision of it. Like someone dissecting your face with a scalpel and finding it medically insufficient for public consumption. Xavier, move to the left. No, further left. Actually, just step out of frame entirely. Maren didn't even look up from her phone screen as she adjusted the angle for her 1000th selfie of the day. You're casting a shadow on my good side. I stood there in our upscale downtown condo, watching my wife of 4 years treat me like a piece of furniture that didn't match her aesthetic. The morning light streaming through our floor-to-ceiling windows highlighted every carefully curated detail of our living space, from the white marble countertops to the strategically placed succulents that Maren rotated weekly for optimal Instagram lighting. Good morning to you too, sweetheart, I muttered, adjusting my tie. As a senior data analyst for Morrison Tech, I actually made decent money, enough to afford this place and Maren's lifestyle. But apparently, my salary was more photogenic than my face. Maren finally glanced up, her green eyes scanning me with the same expression she used to evaluate expired yogurt. Oh, you're still here? Don't you have spreadsheets to stare at or something? It's called data analysis, and yes, I have a meeting with the development team at 9. I grabbed my coffee mug, plain black ceramic, because Maren had banned my favorite Star Wars mug from the kitchen for being off-brand. Well, try not to bore them to the ground with your riveting insights about user engagement metrics. She turned back to her phone, fingers flying across the screen. God, look at this lighting. I'm practically glowing. She was, actually. Maren had that effortless beauty that looked expensive even when she rolled out of bed, honey blonde hair that fell in perfect waves, skin that seemed to emit its own soft focus filter. At 33, she'd built a career as a social media manager for Pinnacle Creative, a boutique marketing firm downtown. Her personal Instagram had over 50,000 followers who hung on her every carefully crafted post about authentic living and finding your aesthetic. The irony wasn't lost on me that someone who preached authenticity had turned our entire relationship into performance art. Speaking of engagement, I said, refilling my mug, remember when we used to actually engage with each other? Like, have conversations that didn't revolve around your follower count? Maren's thumb paused mid-scroll. Oh, please. Don't start with the nostalgic husband routine. It's not cute. She held up her phone, checking her reflection in the black screen. Besides, someone has to maintain our social presence. You certainly can't be trusted with it. Right, because I might accidentally post something genuine. Genuine doesn't pay the bills, Xavier. Aesthetic does. She stood up, smoothing down her cream-colored silk blouse. Speaking of which, I have a breakfast meeting with Ronan this morning. We're discussing the new campaign strategy. Ronan Blackwood, her boss. The name that had been cropping up in conversations with increasing frequency over the past few months. I'd met him exactly once, at Pinnacle's holiday party last December. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of effortless confidence that came from inherited wealth and a corner office. The type of man who wore watches that cost more than my car and somehow made it look casual. Another breakfast meeting? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. That's what, the third one this week? He's very hands-on with his top performers. Maren's smile had that practice quality she used in her sponsored content posts. You wouldn't understand. Your boss probably communicates exclusively through Excel sheets and passive-aggressive emails. She wasn't wrong about that, but the dismissal still stung. Right. Well, have fun discussing strategy. I will. She grabbed her Hermes bag, a investment piece that had cost more than I made in a month, and headed for the door. Oh, and Xavier, try not to touch anything in the living room. I'm shooting content there tonight, and I need the lighting to be perfect. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving me alone with my reflection in the hallway mirror. 37 years old, brown hair that refused to cooperate despite expensive product, and what Maren generously called an interesting face. Not ugly, exactly, but not the kind of face that launched 1,000 likes either. I finished my coffee and grabbed my laptop bag, trying to shake off the familiar weight of inadequacy that seemed to settle on my shoulders every morning. The commute to Morrison Tech took 15 minutes through downtown traffic, giving me just enough time to mentally transition from Maren's disappointing husband to Xavier, the competent data analyst. My office was a small but comfortable space on the 12th floor, with a view of the city's modest skyline and walls covered in monitors displaying real-time analytics dashboards. This was my domain, a world where everything made sense, where patterns emerged from chaos, and where my insights actually mattered. Morning, sunshine. Jonas Chen poked his head through my doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the good place downstairs. You look like someone who needs caffeine and possibly therapy. Jonas was my closest friend at Morrison, a cybersecurity specialist with a dry sense of humor and an uncanny ability to read people's moods. We'd bonded over late-night debugging sessions and a shared appreciation for movies that Maren deemed cinematically challenged. "Just the usual marital bliss," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. Maren informed me this morning that I'm too aesthetically challenged to exist in the same frame as her breakfast meeting. Ah, the mysterious breakfast meetings. Jonas settled into the chair across from my desk. "Let me guess, with the Silver Fox boss again?" "Ronan Blackwood, yes. Apparently they have very important strategy to discuss." I pulled up my email, scanning through the usual mix of project updates and meeting requests. I'm probably just being paranoid. "Or you're being observant. There's a difference." Jonas sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "You know, if you ever want to do some analytical research on someone, I might know a guy who knows a guy." "Jonas." "I'm just saying. Data analysis isn't limited to user engagement metrics. People leave digital footprints everywhere these days. Social media, credit card transactions, location data." He shrugged. "Hypothetically speaking, I'm not going to spy on my wife." "Of course not. That would be crazy, paranoid. Definitely not something a reasonable person would do when their spouse is acting shady." He stood up, finishing his coffee. "But if you ever change your mind about that hypothetical research, you know where to find me." After Jonas left, I tried to focus on the quarterly analytics report that was due by end of week. But my mind kept drifting to Maren's breakfast meeting, to the way she'd been dressing differently lately. More expensive, more polished, like she was constantly preparing for a photo shoot. And the way she talked about Ronan with a reverence usually reserved for minor celebrities or luxury brands. I was being paranoid. Maren was ambitious, and Ronan was her boss. Of course she wanted to impress him. Of course she was putting extra effort into her appearance and their working relationship. It didn't mean anything. But as I stared at my computer screen, watching user engagement patterns flow across the monitors in real time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important, some crucial data point that would make everything else make sense. My phone buzzed with a notification. Instagram. Maren had posted a new story. The image showed an elegant breakfast spread at Meridian, the upscale restaurant downtown, perfectly arranged pastries, artisanal coffee in delicate porcelain cups, and in the corner of the frame, barely visible, a man's hand wearing an expensive watch. The caption read, "Morning strategy sessions with the best. Blessed to work. With visionaries. Wassel aesthetic matters. Discon corporate life." I stared at the image for a long moment, analyzing it the way I would analyze any other piece of data. The lighting was perfect, the composition carefully arranged, but it was the watch that caught my attention. A Patek Philippe, if I wasn't mistaken. The same watch Ronan had been wearing at the holiday party. The same watch that had appeared in 3 other recent posts, always just barely visible in the frame. I screenshotted the image and opened my laptop's photo analysis software, a habit from my college days studying digital forensics before switching to business analytics. The metadata was still intact, showing the exact time and location of the photo. 8:47 a.m. at Meridian Restaurant. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened Maren's public Instagram profile and started scrolling backward through her recent posts, looking for patterns. There. Another partial watch shot from last week's client dinner, and another from a networking event 2 weeks ago. Always the same watch, always positioned just carefully enough to be noticeable but not obvious. My phone rang, jolting me out of my analysis. The caller ID showed Morrison's main number. "Xavier, this is Sarah from HR. Could you come down to conference room B when you get a chance? There's someone here who'd like to speak with you." "Sure, I'll be right down." I closed my laptop and headed downstairs, my mind still churning over the watch photos. It was probably nothing. Maren worked in social media. She was always attending events and meetings with well-dressed people. The fact that her boss wore expensive watches wasn't exactly shocking news. Conference room B was on the 3rd floor, a glass-walled space usually reserved for client meetings. As I approached, I could see a woman in an elegant navy suit sitting across from Sarah. She looked to be in her early 40s, with perfectly styled dark hair and the kind of understated jewelry that screamed old money. "Xavier Morrison?" The woman stood as I entered, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Elena Blackwood. I believe you know my husband, Ronan." The bottom dropped out of my stomach. "Mrs. Blackwood, this is unexpected. Please call me Elena." Her smile was polite but cold, like expensive champagne. "I was hoping we could have a private conversation about our respective spouses." Sarah cleared her throat. "I'll just leave you two to talk." She gathered her papers and left, closing the door behind her. Elena waited until we were alone before speaking again. I think we may have something in common, Xavier. A shared interest in workplace dynamics. I sat down slowly, my mind racing. I'm not sure I follow. Oh, I think you do. Elena opened her purse and pulled out her phone. You see, I've been following your wife's Instagram account. Fascinating content. Very aesthetic. She swiped through several screenshots, the same watch photos I'd been analyzing upstairs. That's my husband's watch, by the way, a Patek Philippe Nautilus. I gave it to him for our 10th anniversary. The room felt like it was tilting slightly. Mrs. Blackwood. Elena, and please, don't insult my intelligence by pretending you haven't noticed. You're a data analyst, Xavier. I'm sure you're very good at spotting patterns. She was right. I had noticed. I just hadn't wanted to admit what those patterns meant. What do you want? I asked quietly. The same thing you want, I suspect. The truth. Elena leaned back in her chair, studying me with sharp blue eyes. My husband thinks he's being very clever, discreet, but discretion is rather difficult when one's mistress insists on documenting every moment for social media. The word hung in the air between us like a loaded weapon. Mistress. I don't know what you think you know. I know that my husband has been charging romantic dinners to his corporate card. I know that he's been taking suspiciously long lunch breaks. And I know that your wife has been posting increasingly intimate content featuring pieces of his wardrobe, his favorite restaurants, and his preferred champagne. Elena's voice remained perfectly calm, but there was steel underneath. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I stared at her, feeling like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. Once I acknowledged what she was saying, really acknowledged it, there would be no going back to comfortable denial. Why are you telling me this? Because I believe in informed decision-making, and because I suspect you're a better man than my husband deserves to have as a rival. Elena stood up, smoothing down her skirt. Think about it, Xavier. Look at the data. Really look at it. And when you're ready to discuss next steps, call me. She placed a business card on the table and walked toward the door. Elena. She turned back. How long have you known? Her smile was sad and sharp at the same time. Longer than you have, I'm sure, but not as long as I should have. After she left, I sat alone in the conference room for a long time, staring at the business card. Elena Blackwood, Private Wealth Management, Blackwood and Associates. Old money, just as I'd suspected. I thought about Maren's breakfast meeting this morning, about the careful positioning of Ronan's watch in her photos, about the way she'd been dressing lately, the expensive lingerie I'd assumed she'd bought for herself, the new perfume, the sudden interest in corporate aesthetics. My phone buzzed. Another Instagram notification. Maren had posted a new photo, a close-up of her hand holding a champagne flute with a man's suit jacket visible in the background. The caption read, "Celebrating new opportunities. Sometimes the best partnerships happen when you least expect them. Grateful. Stakhu, new chapters. Aesthetic goals." I screenshotted the image and walked back to my office in a daze. Jonas was waiting by my desk, one look at my face telling him everything he needed to know. So, he said quietly, ready for that hypothetical research now? I looked at Elena's business card, then at the screenshot on my phone, then at Jonas's knowing expression. Yeah, I said. I think I am. The thing about data analysis is that once you start looking for patterns, you can't unsee them. It's like learning that a magic trick is just sleight of hand. The illusion becomes impossible to maintain once you know where to look. Jonas and I spent the next 3 hours in his office, which looked like a cybersecurity command center crossed with a teenager's bedroom. Multiple monitors displayed scrolling code, network traffic analyses, and what appeared to be a live feed of cat videos. His desk was cluttered with energy drink cans, computer components, and a small army of action figures. Okay, so here's what we're working with, Jonas said, pulling up a series of windows on his main monitor. Your wife's digital footprint is extensive. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Snapchat, Pinterest, and something called Be Real that I'm apparently too old to understand. She's in social media marketing. Having multiple platforms is part of her job. Right, but here's where it gets interesting. Jonas clicked through several screenshots. Look at the metadata on her posts over the past 3 months. Location tags, timestamps, even the device information. He pulled up a spreadsheet that would have made my analytics heart sing under different circumstances. Columns of data showing post times, locations, engagement metrics, and device signatures. See this pattern? Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 weeks, she's posted content from the same 3 locations during lunch hours. Meridian Restaurant, the rooftop at Hotel Carlisle, and a place called Sanctuary Spa. I leaned closer to the screen. Those are all expensive places. Exactly. And here's the kicker. Look at the device signatures. Jonas highlighted a column of technical data. Most of her posts come from her iPhone 14 Pro. But these Tuesday and Thursday posts, they're coming from a different device. Same model phone, but different serial number. She could be borrowing someone else's phone for better camera quality. Could be, or... Jonas opened another window showing credit card transaction data. Remember how I said people leave digital footprints everywhere? Well, your wife's not the only one with a social media presence. The screen now showed Ronan Blackwood's LinkedIn profile, along with several other social media accounts. Jonas had somehow compiled a timeline of Ronan's public posts and check-ins. How did you get access to his financial data? I didn't, but I didn't need to. Social media tells the whole story if you know how to read it. Jonas pointed to a series of posts. Look at this. 3 weeks ago, Ronan posted a photo from Meridian Restaurant with the caption, "Power Lunch with the Team," posted at 1:23 p.m. He switched to another window. And here's your wife's post from the same day, same location, posted at 1:31 p.m. Inspired by great leadership and vision. Different tables, different angles, but look at the background. I stared at the two images side by side. In Maren's photo, you could just make out the edge of Ronan's table in the blurred background. In his photo, there was a glimpse of blonde hair at a corner table that could have been anyone. This could still be coincidental. Sure, let's check another date. Jonas pulled up more posts. Last Thursday, Ronan posts from the rooftop. Sometimes the best business discussions happen above the city. Your wife posts 20 minutes later. Elevated thinking requires elevated spaces. The pattern was undeniable. For 6 weeks, Maren and Ronan had been posting from the same locations within minutes of each other, but never acknowledging each other's presence. It's like they're having a public affair while pretending to be strangers, I said quietly. Gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. Jonas opened a new analysis window. I ran facial recognition software on the background elements of their photos. That expensive watch your wife keeps accidentally featuring, it appears in 17 different posts across both their accounts over the past 2 months. My stomach twisted. 17 times. And that's just the obvious stuff. There are clothing matches, jewelry pieces, even the same champagne glasses appearing in both their content streams. Jonas leaned back in his chair. Xavier, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but your wife is having an affair, and she's documenting it for 50,000 followers. I stared at the evidence spread across Jonas's monitors. Charts, timelines, photo analyses, metadata, all pointing to the same inescapable conclusion. Maren wasn't just cheating on me, she was turning her infidelity into content. Why would she post evidence of her own affair? Because she doesn't think anyone is paying attention, or maybe she gets off on the risk? Jonas minimized the windows and turned to face me. Social media creates this weird psychological bubble where people feel simultaneously invisible and performative. She's probably convinced herself that she's being clever and subtle. Subtle like a billboard. To us, yeah, but to her followers, they just see aspirational lifestyle content. Expensive restaurants, luxury brands, corporate success. They don't know what Ronan looks like or what watch he wears. To them, he's just anonymous props in her aesthetic. My phone buzzed, a text from Maren. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Big presentation tomorrow. I showed the message to Jonas, who immediately pulled up Ronan's social media accounts. Let me guess, I said. He's also working late? Posted 15 minutes ago. Burning the midnight oil with my top performer. Excellence never sleeps. Jonas shook his head. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. I felt something cold and sharp crystallizing in my chest. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that, but a kind of analytical detachment, like my brain was switching into problem-solving mode. Jonas, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to expose this kind of behavior, what would be the most effective approach? Hypothetically? Jonas grinned, but there was something predatory in his expression. Well, the beautiful thing about people who document their own crimes is that they've already done most of the work for you. You just need to connect the dots publicly. Meaning? Meaning your wife has spent 2 months creating a detailed timeline of her affair, complete with photographic evidence and metadata. She's basically built the prosecution's case herself. Jonas pulled up Maren's Instagram account. The question is, how public do you want to make it? I thought about Elena Blackwood's cold smile, about Maren's dismissive comments about my appearance, about the way she'd been treating our marriage like an inconvenient backdrop to her real life. What would cause the most damage to both of them? Professional embarrassment. Social media influencers live and pass by their reputation. One scandal can destroy years of brand building. Jonas cracked his knuckles. And executives like Ronan? They're terrified of anything that might affect their corporate image or their wife's social standing. Elena already knows about the affair. But does the rest of their social circle, their professional networks, their followers and clients? Jonas opened a new browser window. The thing about social media scandals is that they move fast and burn everything in their path, especially when there's photographic evidence. I stared at Maren's Instagram profile, with its carefully curated feed of aspirational content and lifestyle branding. 50,000 followers who thought they knew her, who looked up to her, who bought the products she recommended and tried to emulate her aesthetic. Show me how it would work. For the next hour, Jonas walked me through what he called social media warfare. How to compile evidence, how to create maximum impact, how to ensure the story spread beyond just our immediate circles. The key is authenticity, he explained. People can smell a fake scandal from miles away. But this is real. The photos are real, the timeline is real, the metadata is real. All you'd be doing is connecting dots that are already publicly visible. And the legal implications? Minimal. Everything we'd be sharing is already public. Your wife posted these photos herself. We're not hacking anything or stealing private information. We're just curating her existing content in a new context. By the time I left Jonas's office, I had a USB drive containing everything we'd compiled. Photo analyses, timeline correlations, metadata reports, and a detailed social media strategy that would turn Maren's own content against her. I drove home through the city streets, past the restaurants where my wife had been conducting her very public secret affair, past the billboards and digital displays that reminded me of the world she lived in, a world where image was everything and I was just an aesthetic liability. Our condo was dark when I arrived. Maren was still at her late meeting, probably creating more content for tomorrow's posts. I poured myself a scotch and sat in my home office, staring at the USB drive. My computer chimed with a notification. Maren had posted a new Instagram story. The image showed 2 champagne glasses on a white tablecloth, with city lights twinkling in the background. The caption read, "Sometimes the most important conversations happen after hours. Grateful for mentors who see potential where others see problems. Blessed growth. New opportunities." I screenshot the image and added it to my growing collection of evidence. Then I opened my laptop and began typing. Not a social media post, not yet, just a document, a timeline, a careful analytical breakdown of everything I'd discovered, complete with timestamps, photo evidence, and metadata analysis. As I worked, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, a sense of purpose. For the first time since Maren had started treating me like a disappointing accessory, I was the one with power. I was the one with information. I was the one who could control the narrative. My phone buzzed with another text from Maren. "Presentation went amazing. Ronan says I'm exceeding all expectations. Staying at Tessa's tonight so I don't wake you up early. Love you. Tessa, her best friend and fellow influencer, who lived in a studio apartment across town." I opened Instagram and checked Tessa's recent stories. She was at a club downtown with 3 other girls, clearly having been there for hours based on the progression of increasingly blurry photos. Maren wasn't at Tessa's. She was probably at Ronan's penthouse, creating more aesthetic content for tomorrow's posts. I finished my scotch and made a decision. Tomorrow, I would start implementing Jonas's strategy. But tonight, I had one more piece of research to conduct. I opened my laptop's browser and navigated to a website Jonas had mentioned, a reverse image search engine that could trace photos across multiple platforms and websites. I uploaded one of the photos from Maren's recent posts, the one featuring Ronan's distinctive watch. The search results were illuminating. The same photo had appeared on a luxury lifestyle blog 3 days earlier, credited to M. Morrison with the caption, "Local influencer spotted at exclusive industry event." Below that, a gossip site had reposted it with speculation about mystery romance and power couple goals. Maren wasn't just documenting her affair. She was actively promoting it to lifestyle blogs and gossip sites, building buzz around her mystery romance with an unnamed industry leader. She was turning our marriage's destruction into a marketing campaign. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time, feeling something cold and calculating settle into place where my heart used to be. Maren wanted to be a social media sensation. She wanted to turn her life into public performance art. Fine. I'd give her exactly what she wanted. But I'd be the one directing the show. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that comes from making a decision you can't take back. Maren still wasn't home, her sleepover at Tessa's apparently extending into the next day. She'd texted around midnight with a selfie that showed her in silk pajamas I'd never seen before, claiming she was too tired to drive home safely. I reverse searched that photo too. The pajamas were La Perla, retailing for $800. Either Tessa had suddenly upgraded her sleepwear budget, or Maren was lying about her location. Again. I made coffee in our pristine kitchen, surrounded by the props of Maren's lifestyle brand. Everything was white, minimalist, carefully arranged for optimal lighting. Even our coffee maker, a $1,000 Italian espresso machine, had been chosen more for its photogenic qualities than its functionality. My phone buzzed with a good morning text from my wife. Tessa made the most amazing breakfast. Posting content later. Hope you have a good day at work. XOXO. I screenshot the message and added it to my evidence file. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened Maren's Instagram account on my laptop and began studying it like a dataset. 53,000 followers. Average engagement rate of 4.2%. Top posts featuring lifestyle content, fashion, food, and what she called corporate inspiration. Her bio read, living authentically, brand partnerships, DM for collabs, aesthetic over everything. Aesthetic over everything, including, apparently, her marriage. I scrolled through 2 months of posts, taking screenshots and making notes. The pattern Jonas had identified was even clearer in daylight. Starting 8 weeks ago, there had been a subtle shift in her content. More expensive locations, more luxury brands, more professional inspiration posts, and threaded through it all like a breadcrumb trail were pieces of Ronan Blackwood. His watch in 17 posts, his favorite restaurants in 12, his preferred champagne in 8, his car, a silver Tesla Model S, visible in the background of 6 different photos. Even his apartment building had appeared in her stories, tagged as inspiration hunting in the city. She'd been documenting their entire relationship for her followers, turning her affair into aspirational content, but the most damaging evidence was in her captions. Reading them chronologically, they told a story. Week 1. Inspired by leaders who see potential in unexpected places. Week 3. Sometimes the best mentorship happens outside office hours. Week 5. Grateful for guidance from someone who truly understands aesthetic vision. Week 7. The most valuable partnerships are built on mutual appreciation. Yesterday. Sometimes the most important conversations happen after hours. It was like reading a romance novel written in corporate speak and lifestyle hashtags. I opened a new browser window and logged into Maren's Instagram account. She'd given me the password months ago, back when she still pretended to value transparency in our relationship. She'd probably forgotten I had access, just another detail that had become irrelevant to her new narrative. For a moment, I hesitated. What I was about to do would detonate our marriage, destroy her career, and probably end Ronan's as well. There would be no going back, no possibility of reconciliation or forgiveness. Then I remembered her words from yesterday morning. You're so unphotogenic, I can't even post us online. Look at my boss instead. I opened the photo gallery on her account and found the folder I was looking for. Tulum Vacation, private. 37 photos. Maren and Ronan on a beach. Maren and Ronan in a luxury resort. Maren and Ronan in positions that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. All taken 3 weeks ago, during what she'd told me was a solo wellness retreat, to find her creative center. I'd paid for that trip. Transferred money to her account so she could invest in her mental health and content creation. She'd posted carefully cropped photos of sunsets and spa treatments, building sympathy from her followers about needing time to recharge and reconnect with her authentic self. The authentic self, apparently, included my boss's husband. I selected the most damning photo. Maren and Ronan on a private beach, clearly intimate, his distinctive watch visible as he held her close. Then I crafted a caption that would use her own language against her. Finally ready to share my truth. Sometimes the most authentic content comes from the most unexpected partnerships. For weeks, I've been hinting at a special collaboration that's been changing my life. Meet the man who's been inspiring my aesthetic evolution, my boss, my mentor, and so much more. To my husband, you always said I needed to be more authentic online. Here's my most honest post yet. And to everyone who's been following our journey through my subtle hints and carefully placed details, thank you for being part of our story. Some partnerships are worth the risk. Authenticity matters. Shakshir, living my truth. Would unite aesthetic goals. Shak's new chapter, worth it. I tagged Ronan's Instagram account, his company's account, and added location tags for all the restaurants and hotels where they'd been meeting. Then I tagged Elena Blackwood's professional account and several of the luxury brands that sponsored Maren's content. My finger hovered over the share button. This would destroy everything. Not just Maren's career and Ronan's marriage, but probably his job as well. Elena had made it clear she knew about the affair, but public humiliation was different from private knowledge. This would make their betrayal impossible to ignore or minimize. I thought about Maren's dismissive comments about my appearance, about the way she'd been treating our marriage like an inconvenient backdrop to her real life, about the $800 pajamas she'd worn while lying about her location. I hit share. The post went live to Maren's 53,000 followers at 9:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning, prime engagement time for her demographic. Then I did something that felt almost as satisfying. I opened my own long-dormant Instagram account and posted a simple message. Sometimes the most valuable data comes from sources you're not supposed to analyze. Turns out my wife has been crowdsourcing her affair for weeks, and I've been the only one not following along. Thanks to everyone who liked and commented on the evidence, your engagement metrics helped me identify the pattern. Data analysis, pattern recognition, algorithmic revenge. I included screenshots of the timeline Jonas and I had created, showing the correlation between Maren and Ronan's posts, complete with metadata analysis and location tracking. Then I sat back and watched the internet do what it does best, amplify drama at the speed of light. The first comments appeared within minutes. OMG, is this real? I knew something was going on with those watch pics. This is the most savage thing I've ever seen. She's been flaunting this affair for weeks, and we all just thought it was aesthetic content. The audacity. Within an hour, Maren's post had over 2,000 comments and was being shared across multiple platforms. Someone had already created a TikTok compilation of all her subtle hints about the affair, set to dramatic music. The hashtag #TarkAestheticAffair was trending. My phone started ringing. Jonas first. Holy shit, Xavier. You actually did it. I did exactly what she asked for, I said, watching the comments continue to flood in. She wanted authentic content. She wanted to go viral. She wanted to be a social media sensation. The internet is losing its mind. Someone already made a Twitter thread breaking down all the clues in her previous posts. She's getting dragged by everyone from lifestyle bloggers to data privacy advocates. Any word from the subjects themselves? Ronan's LinkedIn profile went private about 20 minutes ago. Maren's phone is probably melting from notifications. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Maren. I let it go to voicemail, then immediately received a text. What the hell did you do? Another call, another voicemail, another text. Delete that post right now. Then, this is insane. You're ruining everything. And finally, we need to talk. I'm coming home. I screenshot each message and posted them to my Instagram story with the caption, Subject appears distressed by the public reception of her authentic content. Interesting how transparency loses its appeal when the audience grows beyond your target demographic. The doorbell rang 40 minutes later. Through the security camera, I could see Maren standing in the hallway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her carefully maintained aesthetic completely destroyed. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her expression was pure fury. I opened the door. You psychotic bastard, she hissed, pushing past me into the condo. Do you have any idea what you've done? I shared your content with a wider audience. Isn't that what influencers want? More reach, more engagement? You destroyed my career, my reputation, my entire life. She spun around to face me, and I could see that she'd been crying. Those photos were private. They were on your Instagram account. In a private folder. On an account where you gave me admin access. Legally speaking, I had every right to share content from an account I'm authorized to manage. Maren stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Since when do you know anything about social media legal issues? Since I spent yesterday consulting with a lawyer who specializes in digital privacy law. Fascinating field, actually. Very data-driven. That was a lie, but it sounded convincing, and watching Maren's face go pale made it worth the deception. You can't do this to me, she said quietly. Xavier, please, delete the post. We can work this out. I'll end things with Ronan. We can go to counseling. Like you ended things with him last night when you stayed at his place instead of Tessa's? Her mouth opened and closed without sound. See, that's the problem with building your life around social media, Maren. Everything leaves a digital trail. Tessa posted her location all night. She was at 3 different clubs downtown. Your phone's location services showed you at Ronan's building, and those pajamas you were wearing in your sleepover selfie? They retail for $800. Either Tessa's been holding out on us about her financial situation, or you're a really terrible liar. Maren sank onto our white leather couch, her head in her hands. This will destroy everything. My sponsorships, my brand partnerships, my entire career. Your career was built on lies anyway, at least now it's authentic. And what about Ronan? His marriage, his job? What about them? I sat down across from her, feeling calmer than I had in months. You didn't seem concerned about Elena's feelings when you were posting photos of her husband's watch. You didn't worry about Pinnacle Creative's reputation when you were documenting your affair with their CEO. That's different. How? Because... She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Because I didn't think anyone would figure it out. You posted 17 photos featuring his watch, Maren. You checked into the same restaurants within minutes of each other. You used his corporate credit card to pay for dinners you later featured in sponsored content. You didn't think anyone would figure it out because you assumed I was too stupid and too boring to pay attention. That's not? You told me yesterday morning that I was too unphotogenic to exist in the same frame as your aesthetic. You said I should look at your boss instead. I leaned forward. So I did. I looked very carefully. And it turns out your boss is quite photogenic, especially in those Tulum photos. Maren's phone buzzed constantly in her purse, but she ignored it. How many people have seen it? I checked her Instagram metrics on my phone. Your original post has 47,000 likes, 8,000 comments, and has been shared to over 200 other accounts. My analysis post has gone viral on 3 platforms. Someone created a podcast episode about it that's already trending, and a lifestyle blogger just published a 1,500-word breakdown of your aesthetic affair that's getting picked up by major publications. Oh, God. She buried her face in her hands again. My mother's going to see this. My clients. Everyone. That's the thing about social media, sweetheart. Once something goes viral, it never really goes away. It becomes part of your permanent digital footprint. My phone rang. Elena Blackwood. Excuse me, I told Maren. I need to take this. Xavier. Elena's voice was crisp and satisfied. I wanted to thank you for this morning's illuminating content. I thought you might appreciate the data visualization. Oh, I do. Ronan's been trying to call me for 2 hours. Apparently his board of directors is concerned about his judgment and professional conduct. Something about company resources being used for personal entertainment. That's unfortunate. Isn't it? I forwarded your wife's posts to my divorce attorney. Such detailed documentation of adultery makes the proceedings much more straightforward. Happy to help. I'm sure you are. Oh, and Xavier, that metadata analysis you included was particularly effective. Very thorough, very damaging. After Elena hung up, I looked at Maren, who was staring at me with something approaching horror. That was Elena Blackwood, I said. She wanted to thank me for providing evidence for her divorce proceedings. You're working with his wife? I'm working with the data. Elena just happens to be another interested party in the analysis. Maren's phone started ringing. She looked at the screen and her face went white. It's my boss. Well, my former boss, probably. You should answer it. This could be important career feedback. She declined the call, but immediately received a text that made her face crumple. I'm fired. Effective immediately. They're terminating my contracts and removing me from all current campaigns. That seems like a reasonable response to an employee posting intimate photos with the CEO. Stop being so calm about this, Maren exploded. You're destroying multiple people's lives. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just making visible what was already happening. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city where my wife had been conducting her very public secret affair. You made the choice to document your betrayal, Maren. You made the choice to turn our marriage into background noise for your aesthetic evolution. You made the choice to treat me like I was too stupid and too ugly to matter. I never said you were ugly. You said I was unphotogenic. You said I ruined your grid. You said I should look at your boss instead. I turned back to face her. So I did, and I found 2 months of evidence that you've been living a double life, funded by my salary and documented for your followers. What do you want? She asked quietly. Money? The condo? What will it take for you to delete those posts? I want you to understand something, Maren. For months, you've been treating me like I was invisible, like I was just a convenient source of funding for your real life. You made me feel like I was lucky to be married to someone so far out of my league. Xavier. But here's what you never understood about data analysis. The most powerful insights come from information that people don't realize they're sharing. You spent 2 months creating a detailed record of your affair because you thought I was too boring to pay attention. You documented your own betrayal because you assumed I was too stupid to see the patterns. I walked over to where she sat on the couch, looking small and destroyed in the middle of her perfectly curated living space. You wanted to be a social media sensation, Maren. You wanted authentic content. You wanted to go viral. I smiled, and for the first time in months, it felt genuine. Congratulations. You got everything you asked for. The beautiful thing about social media destruction is that it's completely democratic. Once the internet decides you're the main character in a scandal, everyone gets to participate in your downfall. By noon, Daryl Aesthetic Affair was the number 3 trending topic nationally. Someone had created a subreddit dedicated to analyzing Maren's previous posts for clues. A TikTok creator with 2 million followers had made a 10-part series breaking down the most documented affair in influencer history. 3 different podcasts were planning emergency episodes. I sat in my office at Morrison Tech, ostensibly working on quarterly analytics, but actually monitoring the real-time destruction of my wife's digital empire. Jonas had set up a secondary monitor displaying social media feeds, comment streams, and engagement metrics. "This is unprecedented," he said, scrolling through Twitter. "I've never seen anything spread this fast. Look at this. Someone made a timeline of every clue going back 3 months, complete with photo analysis and metadata breakdowns." "People love a mystery solved," I said, watching Maren's Instagram followers fluctuate wildly. She was simultaneously gaining new followers drawn by the drama and losing sponsors horrified by the scandal. Especially when the solution was hiding in plain sight. "Your wife's getting absolutely destroyed in the comments. Listen to this one. Imagine being so narcissistic that you turn your affair into content strategy. And this. She really tagged her husband's job in a post about cheating on him. The audacity is unmatched." My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. "Xavier Morrison? This is Jessica Chen from Digital Culture Weekly. We're running a story about the viral affair scandal and would love to get your perspective as the husband who exposed it." "I didn't expose anything," I said calmly. "I simply shared my wife's existing content with a broader audience. She created all the evidence herself." "Right. But the way you analyzed and presented the data, that was brilliant. Our readers would love to hear about your methodology." "It's basic pattern recognition. Any competent data analyst could have identified the correlations. But you're the one who actually did it. Can we schedule an interview?" I looked at Jonas, who was grinning and giving me a thumbs up. "Sure," I said, "but I should mention, I'm planning to share more analysis later today. You might want to wait until the full picture is available." After I hung up, Jonas leaned back in his chair. "More analysis? What else did you find?" "Remember how Maren's been posting about brand partnerships and sponsored content? Well, I did some research into the financial side of her influencer career. I opened a spreadsheet I'd been building all morning. Turns out she's been using her affair as a marketing strategy." "What do you mean?" "Look at this." I pulled up a timeline showing Maren's sponsored posts over the past 3 months. Every time she posted content featuring Ronan, his watch, his restaurants, his car, her engagement rates spiked. Higher engagement means higher rates for brand partnerships. So she was monetizing her affair? Indirectly, yes. The mystery and luxury elements were driving follower growth and brand interest. She was literally profiting from documenting her betrayal of our marriage. Jonas whistled low. "That's impressively sociopathic." "It gets better. Remember those expensive dinners Ronan was charging to his corporate card? Maren was featuring them in sponsored content for restaurant brands and lifestyle companies. She was getting paid to promote places that her lover was illegally funding with company money. That's fraud." "That's content creation," I corrected. "But yes, there are some interesting legal implications." My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized. Pinnacle Creative's main line. "Mr. Morrison, this is David Chen, legal counsel for Pinnacle Creative. We need to discuss the social media posts you published this morning involving our former employee and CEO." "What about them?" "We're concerned about potential defamation and privacy violations. We'd like to request that you remove the content and refrain from further posts." I'm not sure I understand the legal basis for that request. Everything I shared was already publicly posted by your former employee on her professional social media accounts. Nevertheless, the company's reputation is being damaged by association with this scandal. "That's unfortunate," I said, "but I'm not responsible for your employees' decision to document their affairs on company-sponsored social media accounts. You might want to review your social media policies." "Mr. Morrison, Actually, since you called, I should mention that I've discovered some interesting patterns in how company resources were used to fund content creation. I'm planning to share that analysis later today. You might want to have your accounting department review corporate credit card expenses from the past 3 months. There was a long pause. What kind of analysis? The kind that shows systematic misuse of company funds for personal entertainment, subsequently featured in monetized social media content. Very detailed, very well documented. Another pause. We'll need to discuss this further. Feel free to call back after you've reviewed the expense reports. I think you'll find the data quite illuminating. After I hung up, Jonas was staring at me with something approaching awe. "You're not just destroying your wife's career," he said. "You're taking down the entire company." "I'm not taking down anything. I'm just making publicly available information more visible and accessible." That's the most terrifying sentence I've ever heard you say. At 2 p.m., I published my second analysis post. This one was more detailed, more damaging, and more carefully researched than the morning's emotional revelation. I called it The Economics of Aesthetic Betrayal, a case study in monetized infidelity. The post included a detailed financial analysis of how Maren's affair had driven her influencer income, screenshots of corporate credit card charges for romantic dinners later featured in sponsored content, a breakdown of how company resources had been converted into social media revenue, metadata analysis proving the systematic nature of the deception, a timeline showing the correlation between affair documentation and brand partnership growth. I posted it simultaneously to Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Medium, with cross-platform hashtags designed for maximum visibility. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within an hour, Xavier corporate affair was trending alongside Dutch aesthetic affair. Financial journalists were picking up the story. Corporate ethics bloggers were using it as a case study. Business schools were already discussing it in social media marketing classes. My phone didn't stop ringing. Interview requests from podcasts, magazines, blogs, and news outlets. Everyone wanted to talk to the data analyst who had revolutionized divorce proceedings and redefined corporate accountability through social media analysis. But the call I was waiting for came at 4:30 p.m. "Xavier." Maren's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, you have to stop." "Stop what?" "The posts, the analysis, the everything." She was crying. "Ronan's been fired. His wife is filing for divorce. The company is under investigation. My parents saw the news. My sister won't return my calls." That sounds like a lot of consequences for a lot of poor decisions. "I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. But this is destroying innocent people." Innocent people? Ronan's kids, his employees, the other people at Pinnacle who had nothing to do with this. Ronan's kids will be fine. Rich kids usually are. His employees will find new jobs, and the people at Pinnacle should probably be grateful that their company's financial irregularities were exposed before they became criminal charges. "You're not the person I married," Maren said quietly. "You're right. The person you married was too naive to notice when his wife was documenting her affair for social media. Too trusting to analyze the data that was right in front of him. Too concerned with being a good husband to realize he was married to someone who saw him as a funding source for her real life. I loved you. You loved my salary. You loved the stability I provided while you built your brand. You loved having someone to pay for your lifestyle while you pursued more aesthetically pleasing options. That's not true. Maren, you literally posted photos of another man's watch 17 times while telling me I was too ugly for your Instagram feed. You turned our marriage into background noise for your affair documentation. You monetized your betrayal of our relationship." Silence on the other end of the line. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "What will it take for you to stop?" "I want you to understand something. For 3 months, you made me feel like I was lucky you settled for me. Like I should be grateful that someone like you would lower herself to marry someone like me. You made me believe that I was the problem in our relationship." Xavier. But it turns out I'm very good at solving problems, especially when I have good data to work with. And you gave me excellent data, Maren. 3 months of detailed, time-stamped, geotagged evidence of exactly who you really are. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. Sorry your career is over. Sorry your reputation is destroyed. Sorry your affair partner lost his job and his marriage. I'm sorry I hurt you. No, you're not. You're sorry I turned out to be smarter than you thought. You're sorry I knew how to analyze the data you thought you were hiding. You're sorry your aesthetic choices had consequences. I could hear her sobbing on the other end of the line. The divorce papers will be filed tomorrow, I continued. My lawyer says the evidence of adultery makes the proceedings very straightforward. You'll get nothing from our shared assets, since you used marital funds to support an affair that you then monetized through brand partnerships. I have nowhere to go. You have 53,000 Instagram followers. I'm sure some of them have couches. Xavier, please. Oh, and Maren. You might want to check your email. Several of your former brand partners are requesting refunds for sponsored content that was created using fraudulently obtained resources. Apparently, using your lover's corporate credit card to fund restaurant reviews violates most influencer marketing contracts. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. Jonas was standing in my office doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression of mixed admiration and concern. So, he said, handing me a cup, how does it feel to be the most feared man in social media? Honestly, pretty good. I took a sip of coffee and looked out the window at the city where my wife had been conducting her very public secret affair. For months, Maren made me feel invisible, irrelevant, like I was just a convenient source of funding for her real life. And now I'm trending on 4 platforms, getting interview requests from major publications and watching her entire digital empire collapse in real time. I smiled. Turns out I'm very photogenic when I'm holding the camera. My phone buzzed with another interview request. This one from a major news network wanting to discuss the future of digital accountability and how data analysis is changing the landscape of personal relationships. You know what the best part is? I told Jonas. She's still getting exactly what she wanted. She's a social media sensation, she's going viral, she's the most talked about influencer on the internet. Just not for the reasons she expected. No, I agreed, watching my latest post hit 50,000 shares. But as she always said, aesthetic over everything. And there's something beautifully aesthetic about watching someone destroy themselves with their own content strategy. Jonas raised his coffee cup in a toast. To the algorithm of revenge. To the algorithm of revenge? I agreed. And for the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy. The thing about going viral is that it creates its own momentum. By Friday morning, less than 24 hours after my first post, the story had evolved beyond social media scandal into something approaching cultural phenomenon. I woke up in my empty condo. Maren had apparently spent the night at an actual friend's house this time, to find 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and over 200 email notifications. My LinkedIn profile had gained 5,000 followers overnight. My Instagram analysis posts had been shared by verified accounts with millions of followers. Someone had created a Wikipedia page about the aesthetic affair scandal. 3 different documentary producers had reached out about film rights. A publisher wanted to discuss a book deal about digital age infidelity and data-driven revenge. But the most interesting message was from Elena Blackwood. Coffee this morning? I have a proposition that might interest you. We met at Meridian, the same restaurant where Maren and Ronan had conducted several of their documented strategy sessions. Elena was already seated at a corner table when I arrived, looking perfectly composed despite the fact that her marriage was imploding in real time across multiple social media platforms. You look well, she said as I sat down. Success agrees with you. Revenge agrees with me, I corrected. Success is just a byproduct. Fair enough. Elena signaled the waiter for coffee. I wanted to thank you again for yesterday's comprehensive analysis. My legal team says it's the most detailed evidence of adultery they've ever seen in a divorce case. Happy to help? I'm sure you are, but I'm hoping we can help each other further. Elena leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Xavier, what are your plans for the weekend? Probably fielding interview requests and watching my wife's career finish collapsing. Why? Because I think you might enjoy attending Pinnacle Creative's annual investor gala tomorrow night. I raised an eyebrow. I wasn't invited. Also, I'm pretty sure your husband was fired yesterday. He was. But the company is trying to distance itself from the scandal. And what better way to demonstrate corporate accountability than by publicly acknowledging the data analysis that exposed their former CEO's misconduct? They want to give me an award? They want to avoid a shareholder lawsuit. Your analysis revealed systematic misuse of corporate funds, potential fraud, and massive liability exposure. The board is terrified. Elena smiled coldly. So they're going to publicly thank you for your valuable insights into corporate governance and digital accountability. And you'll be there? As a major shareholder, yes. Ronan's family money built half that company, but the shares are in my name. I'll be sitting in the front row, watching them praise the man who destroyed my husband's career. That seems satisfying? Oh, it will be. But here's what will make it perfect. Maren will be there too. I nearly choked on my coffee. What? She's been desperately trying to salvage her reputation. Apparently she's convinced herself that if she can make a public apology and demonstrate accountability and growth, She might be able to rebuild her brand. Elena's smile was predatory. She's planning to crash the gala and make a scene. Very dramatic, very social media ready. How do you know this? Because she called me yesterday, crying and begging me to convince you to delete your posts. She seems to think we're allies now, united by our shared victimhood. Elena laughed. I may have encouraged that delusion. You want me to be there when she makes her play. I want you to be ready for her final performance, because I suspect it's going to be quite the show. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping for clothes that weren't chosen by Maren. Real clothes, expensive clothes, the kind of outfit that would photograph well under professional lighting. Because if I was going to be the guest of honor at a corporate gala, and if my estranged wife was planning some kind of public reconciliation attempt, I wanted to look like the kind of man who deserved better than her. The Pinnacle Creative Annual Gala was held at the Grand Metropolitan, downtown's most prestigious hotel. I arrived fashionably late, wearing a custom-tailored navy suit and carrying myself with the confidence that comes from having destroyed your enemies using their own weapons. The ballroom was filled with the city's business and creative elite, exactly the kind of crowd that Maren had always wanted to impress. I was immediately approached by a parade of executives, journalists, and social media experts who wanted to discuss my innovative approach to digital accountability. Mr. Morrison. A woman in an elegant black dress extended her hand. I'm Sarah Chen, editor of Digital Culture Weekly. We spoke yesterday. I have to say, your analysis has completely changed how we think about social media privacy and corporate responsibility. Thank you. Though I should point out that I didn't violate anyone's privacy. I just made publicly available information more accessible. That's exactly what makes it so brilliant. You use their own transparency against them. As I networked through the crowd, I caught glimpses of Elena across the room. She was holding court with a group of investors, looking every inch the wronged but dignified wife. Occasionally, she would catch my eye and nod slightly, like a general acknowledging her battlefield ally. At 9 o'clock, the formal presentations began. Pinnacle Creative's interim CEO, a nervous-looking man who'd been promoted after Ronan's termination, took the stage to address the recent challenges facing the company. While we cannot control the personal choices of former employees, he said carefully, we can learn from the valuable insights that have been brought to our attention regarding corporate governance and digital accountability. He went on to announce new policies for expense reporting, social media oversight, and employee conduct. Then, to my surprise, he called my name. We'd like to acknowledge Xavier Morrison, whose data analysis helped identify significant irregularities in our corporate systems. Mr. Morrison, would you join us on stage? I walked up to polite applause, very aware that this moment was being photographed and live-streamed by multiple outlets. As I shook hands with the interim CEO and accepted a symbolic award for excellence in digital analysis, I scanned the crowd for any sign of Maren. I found her near the back of the ballroom, partially hidden behind a pillar. She was wearing a stunning red dress I'd never seen before, her hair and makeup perfect despite everything that had happened. Even in crisis, even with her career in ruins, she looked like she belonged in this room. Our eyes met across the crowded space, and I saw her take a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever she was planning. I accepted the microphone for a brief acceptance speech. Thank you for this recognition, I began. Though I should clarify that I'm not a corporate accountability expert. I'm just a husband who got tired of being treated like he was too stupid to notice what was happening in his own marriage. A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't the polite, professional speech they'd been expecting. For months, I watched my wife document her affair on social media, assuming I was too boring and too ugly to pay attention. She was probably right about the boring part. Data analysis isn't exactly glamorous work, but she was wrong about the stupid part. I could see Maren moving through the crowd now, working her way toward the front of the room. The beautiful thing about social media is that it creates permanent records of temporary feelings. Every post, every photo, every carefully crafted caption becomes part of a digital timeline that tells the true story of who we are and what we value. Maren had reached the edge of the stage area. She was positioning herself for maximum visibility, probably planning to interrupt my speech with some kind of dramatic reconciliation attempt. My wife spent 3 months creating a detailed record of her betrayal, funded by corporate resources and monetized through brand partnerships. She turned our marriage into content strategy and our divorce into performance art. I looked directly at Maren, who was now standing in full view of the cameras and crowd. And you know what? I'm grateful, because her need to document everything gave me the evidence I needed to understand exactly who I was married to. Her aesthetic choices revealed her authentic character. Maren started to move toward the stage, probably planning to interrupt with tears and apologies and pleas for forgiveness, but I wasn't finished. So, to anyone else who's being made to feel invisible in their own relationship, who's being told they're not good enough or attractive enough or interesting enough, pay attention to the data. People always tell you who they really are. You just have to know how to analyze the information. I handed the microphone back to the interim CEO and walked off the stage, passing Maren as she tried to intercept me. "Xavier, please," she said quietly, reaching for my arm. "Can we talk? Privately? I think we've said everything we need to say, publicly. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we can fix this. We can work through it. Maren, you didn't make mistakes. You made choices. Deliberate, calculated choices that you documented and monetized and turned into social media content." I looked around the ballroom, at all the phones pointed in our direction, at the cameras capturing every moment of this conversation. "And you're making another choice right now, trying to turn our reconciliation into your comeback story. That's not... You're literally doing it again, turning our private relationship into public performance. Even now, even after everything, you can't resist the urge to make our marriage about your brand." I could see the realization dawning in her eyes that this conversation was being recorded, that her attempt at private reconciliation had become another viral moment, that she'd walked into yet another public humiliation. "I loved you," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You loved the idea of me. You loved having a stable, reliable husband who would fund your lifestyle and stay in the background while you built your real life with more photogenic people. Please don't do this here. You chose to do this here, Maren. You chose to make our relationship public. You chose to turn our marriage into content. You chose to document your betrayal and monetize your affair." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You wanted to be a social media sensation. You wanted authentic content. You wanted to go viral." I smiled, and I knew that every camera in the room was capturing this moment. "Congratulations. You got everything you asked for." I walked away, leaving Maren standing alone in her perfect red dress, surrounded by cameras and phones and the wreckage of the life she'd built on lies and aesthetics. Elena was waiting for me near the exit, her expression satisfied and cold. "That was perfect," she said quietly. "Absolutely perfect." "It was honest," I replied. "Sometimes that's the same thing." As we left the hotel together, I could already see the social media posts beginning to appear. Aesthetic Affair was trending again, along with the Adar Shansair Karma Isa data analyst and Sour Authentic Revenge. By morning, Maren's attempted reconciliation would be dissected across every platform, analyzed by every influencer, and turned into content by every creator looking for viral material. She'd gotten exactly what she'd always wanted, to be the main character in her own story. She just hadn't realized it would be a tragedy. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my newly redecorated home office. Maren's aesthetic white minimalism replaced with warm wood and actual personality, when Jonas knocked on my door carrying a bottle of expensive champagne and a tablet displaying social media analytics. "You need to see this," he said, settling into the comfortable leather chair I'd bought to replace Maren's uncomfortable but photogenic furniture. "The final numbers are in." "Final numbers?" "The complete impact assessment of your digital revenge campaign." Jonas opened the tablet and began scrolling through charts and graphs. "It's unprecedented. You didn't just destroy your wife's career. You accidentally created a new field of study." I poured 2 glasses of champagne and leaned back in my chair. "Explain." "Okay, so remember how this all started with you posting evidence of Maren's affair? Well, that was just the beginning. The story has been covered by over 300 media outlets, translated into 17 languages, and turned into case studies at 12 different business schools." "Case studies?" "The Morrison Method, Digital Accountability in the Social Media Age." "Algorithmic Justice, How Data Analysis Revolutionized Personal Betrayal." "The Aesthetic Affair, A Study in Corporate Liability and Social Media Ethics." "Yeah," Jonas grinned. "You're famous, man. Like academically famous." I sipped my champagne, still processing the surreal nature of my new reality. "What about the subjects of the study?" "Well, that's where it gets interesting." Jonas pulled up a new set of data. Ronan Blackwood's divorce was finalized last week. Elena got everything: the house, the company shares, the assets. He's basically starting over at 41 with nothing but a reputation for corporate fraud and adultery. And Maren. Your ex-wife is, well, she's become a cautionary tale. Her Instagram following dropped to under 10,000, mostly people following for the drama. All her brand partnerships were terminated. She's been blacklisted by every major influencer marketing agency in the city. Where is she living? Back with her parents in Ohio. Apparently, she's working at a local boutique and trying to rebuild her life offline. Jonas paused. She did one interview with a podcast about learning from public mistakes and finding authenticity after social media addiction, but it didn't get much traction. Because people are tired of the story? Because people don't believe she's actually changed. The whole interview felt like another attempt to monetize her scandal. Jonas shook his head. She literally cannot stop treating her life like content, even when it's destroying her. I thought about that for a moment. Even in defeat, even with her career ruined and her reputation destroyed, Maren was still trying to turn her experiences into marketable narrative. It was almost tragic, if it weren't so perfectly predictable. What about Pinnacle Creative? Completely restructured. New leadership, new policies, new corporate culture. They actually hired a digital accountability officer whose job is to monitor employee social media for potential liability issues. Jonas laughed. They literally created a position to prevent future Maren situations. And Elena? Elena Blackwood is now the majority shareholder and chairwoman of the board at Pinnacle Creative. She's turned it into one of the most ethically rigorous marketing firms in the city. Also, she's been dating that divorce attorney who handled her case. Apparently, revenge is an aphrodisiac. I raised my glass. Good for her. Good for you, too. You realize you're getting job offers from every major tech company in the country? Something about your innovative approach to data analysis and digital investigation. That was true. My LinkedIn inbox was flooded with recruitment messages from companies wanting to hire the data analyst who revolutionized personal accountability. I'd already had preliminary conversations with 3 different firms about positions that would double my salary and give me my own team. There's something poetic about it, I said. Maren always wanted me to be more successful, more impressive, more worthy of her aesthetic. Turns out all I needed was the right motivation. Revenge motivation. Justice motivation, I corrected. There's a difference. Jonas pulled up one final chart on his tablet. Want to see the most interesting statistic? Sure. Divorce filings citing social media evidence have increased by 43% in the past month. Lawyers are calling it the Morrison effect. You've literally changed how people think about digital privacy in relationships. People are paying more attention to what their spouses post online. People are realizing that social media creates permanent evidence of temporary secrets. Your case proved that infidelity in the digital age leaves a trail that's almost impossible to hide. Jonas closed the tablet and looked at me seriously. You've made cheating significantly more difficult for an entire generation. That seems like a public service. It is. You've created a new form of accountability. People can't just betray their partners and assume they're too stupid or too trusting to notice. Not when every restaurant check-in, every photo tag, every casual mention creates a data point. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. Xavier, this is Maren. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm getting help. Real help. Not for social media, but for myself. I realize now that I lost track of what was real and what was performance. I turned our entire relationship into content without even realizing it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did to you, to us. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be happy. I showed the message to Jonas, who read it and shrugged. Think she means it? I think she thinks she means it. But I also think she's probably going to turn her therapy journey into a comeback narrative at some point. I deleted the message without responding. Some people can't help but perform their lives for an audience, even when the audience stops watching. Are you going to respond? No. The conversation ended 3 weeks ago when she tried to turn our reconciliation into a photo opportunity. I finished my champagne and looked around my newly authentic living space. Besides, I'm busy building a life that doesn't require an audience. Speaking of which, when do you start at Morrison Digital? Monday. Senior Director of Digital Analytics, with a focus on social media investigation and corporate liability assessment. I smiled. Turns out destroying your wife's career is excellent preparation for a career in digital forensics. And the book deal? Still considering it. The publisher wants to call it The Algorithm of Revenge. How Data Analysis Saved My Marriage by Ending It. That's a terrible title. I know, I'm thinking something simpler. Maybe just aesthetic justice. Jonas raised his glass for a final toast. To aesthetic justice, then. To aesthetic justice, I agreed. As Jonas left, I sat alone in my quiet, authentic home, surrounded by furniture I'd chosen for comfort rather than photography, drinking wine I'd selected for taste rather than label recognition. For the first time in years, I felt completely present in my own life. My phone buzzed with another notification. Someone had tagged me in a post about digital age accountability, and The Power of Data-Driven Justice. I glanced at it briefly, then set the phone aside. The internet would continue to analyze and dissect and learn from what had happened. Academic papers would be written, case studies would be taught, new policies would be implemented. But for me, the algorithm had completed its final calculation. Maren had wanted to be a social media sensation, and she'd succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. She'd become the most famous cautionary tale in influencer history, a permanent reminder that authenticity can't be curated and that betrayal leaves digital fingerprints. She'd gotten exactly what she'd asked for: viral fame, widespread recognition, and a story that would never be forgotten. She just hadn't realized that sometimes, when you get everything you want, you lose everything you need. I opened my laptop and began working on the final post I would ever make about my marriage. 3 weeks ago, I shared evidence of my wife's affair that she had inadvertently documented on social media. The response was overwhelming, educational, and ultimately transformative, not just for me, but for how we think about digital accountability in personal relationships. I've received thousands of messages from people who found the courage to examine their own relationships more carefully, who discovered their own worth, who realized they deserved better than being treated as background characters in someone else's aesthetic. To those people, I want to say this: you are not too boring, too ugly, or too ordinary to deserve authentic love. You are not lucky that someone settled for you. You are not responsible for making yourself smaller so someone else can shine brighter. Pay attention to the data. People always tell you who they really are, in how they treat you, how they talk about you, how they include or exclude you from their lives. Trust the patterns, believe the evidence. And remember, the most beautiful aesthetic is a life built on honesty, respect, and genuine connection. Everything else is just performance art. This will be my final post about this chapter of my life. I'm grateful for the support, the opportunities, and the lessons learned. Now it's time to build something new, something authentic, something that doesn't require an audience to be real. To everyone still performing their lives for social media, the algorithm is always watching, always calculating, always remembering. Make sure you're proud of the data you're creating. Authenticity matters. Data never lies. Shakro, new chapter. I hit post and immediately logged out of all my social media accounts. Then I closed my laptop, poured another glass of champagne, and sat in my comfortable chair, watching the sunset through windows that had never been chosen for their photogenic qualities. For the first time in months, I smiled without wondering who was watching. And for the first time in years, I felt genuinely, completely, authentically happy.